Dear Winston, by the time you're reading this, I will already be a human popsicle. I know you don't support my decision to freeze myself. Still, I want to make you understand it. Winston Solis held the letter in trembling hands. Hasia's exuberant penmanship swarmed over several handwritten pages like ants on a mission. There she was, having the last words again. But something about the cursive made Winston's ribs ache and his breath catch. It seemed more a piece of her than the sweater she'd left behind in their townhouse, or the books that still littered the nightstand. He had noticed the previous night when he returned home, alone, that she hadn't even bothered to finish the last book. Of course, there wasn't time. When the publishing house called, informing her that she'd been selected, his Hasia out of 1,000 other writers, they let her know that her appointment at the cryonics facility would be in 2 weeks. They didn't want to give anyone time to get cold feet, Winston thought. After that, all of their time had gone into preparation, the engaging of lawyers, the freezing of assets, the making of prudent long-term investments, the suspension of personhood, preparation, and argument. But that was part of the preparation, wasn't it? Winston thought. They had to disentangle themselves, somehow undo 7 years' worth of life that had knotted them together. Let it all unravel, or else how could she possibly leave? If she had shown some remorse, some regret about leaving him, Winston may have never let her enter that freezing chamber. He might never have let go of her hand. "Would you like some time alone, Mr. Solis?" Winston looked up from the blur of words to find Carolyn watching him, concern subduing her features into a smoothing, soothing stillness. She was Hasia's agent, the one who had arranged it all, to whom Hasia had entrusted this final letter, and who was now contractually designated as her case manager. She was young, he noted, maybe even younger than Hasia. It was very plausible she would be here in another 30 years. Winston took some comfort in the logical detour that Carolyn's presence afforded. "No, that's not necessary," Winston said, and found that he was able to face those words on the page as Carolyn spun in her chair to face her computer screen. He could hear Hasia's voice, more measured now than it had been in their arguments. He could almost see her shoulders shudder in a sigh as she sat down to write, pouring all her feelings into fast strokes of her wrist on the page. "I haven't been able to make you understand so far. I know I failed in person. I saw that mixture of disdain and regret clouding your face when you'd ask me every day, 'Why on earth would you want to go through with this scam?' I'll give it one more shot, here in writing. I promise I've given this serious thought. Here, without further ado, here are the reasons I'm freezing myself. Because I've always been a fan of cryonic freezing plots. Think about it. Futurama, Idiocracy, Austin Powers, all of our favorites. There's the comedy element, yes. A person bumping up awkwardly against the conventions of a new world they don't understand yet. Imagine me stepping into the streets, my eyes nearly blinded by seeing the sun for the first time in decades. And I walk out in my 30-year-old jeans that are probably cool again, but maybe my color palette is off. I'm wearing muted whites and grays, and it turns out in the 2050s are all about saturated azure and salmon. I look like a faded old photograph as I walk out into a world that resembles some postmodern Adobe mission. Almost immediately, I walk in front of a golden hover bus that has to make an abrupt lurch upward to avoid crashing into my head. It's pure slapstick, but that's all surface treatment. Think deeper. Has it ever not worked out for the heroes of these plots? Never. They absorb in a short span the great advances that would have seeped slowly and thus invisibly into their lives over the years. But to me, they're not invisible. All of these innovations and absurdities stand out as my mind stretches to absorb them. These time travelers see the world clearly for what it's become. What a vantage point for an artist! I plan to leverage it into my breakout achievements. I plan to have breakout achievements. Maybe all I need is a different perspective. Because the world is falling to pieces, and I don't care to be around when it hits the ground and shatters, sign me up for the aftermath. I'm an optimist. I believe that in a few decades, humanity will have put the world back together. The order of things will be a bit jumbled, maybe so jumbled I can't tell if it's a utopia or a dystopia, and maybe the cracks from the broken places will still be visible. Maybe they'll be filled with gold. You know that Japanese art where they emphasize scars by highlighting them in gold? I'm Googling it right now. Kintsugi. Maybe that's how the world will turn out 30 years from now. Museums dedicated to antiquated things like racism and poverty and wage slavery, honoring the things that grandparents suffered and overcame. Maybe these architectural wonders, all swooping lines and skylights and marble and travertine. Maybe you've helped design one. And maybe I can be a docent there. I don't know half of these words, guys. Maybe they'll invite me to give talks in the gallery on Saturday mornings. The woman who waited tables back in the days when people cooked and ate dead food together in these things called restaurants. 3D printed food. Need I say more? Right now they're 3D printing guns and human capillaries. I believe in a few decades we'll have 3D printers that cough out sustainable, environmentally responsible steak right onto our biodegradable bamboo plates. Or maybe our plates are made from pieces of the floating Pacific garbage island. We found a productive way to clean it up. Like I said, I'm an optimist. I believe that either we won't have to cook and do dishes, or else the robots will do it for us. And I'm here for it. It's the great equalizer. Because I never thought I'd win. I was one of 1,000 writers who applied for the honor of being frozen and writing and publishing their story upon reanimation. You certainly never thought I had a chance. But no hard feelings. That's what I ultimately wanted to say. I know we both said some heartfelt things before I left. Can we put that behind us? Winston, you'll be nearly 65 years old when I thaw out if everything goes according to plan. That would give us enough time for a sweet dystopian romance, especially with future medical advances. You know, I'm not looking forward to my bathroom mirror telling me how long to brush my teeth, but if all of this stuff tells you and keeps you in good shape while I'm gone, I suppose I'll tolerate the chiding, almost human voice that encourages me to go another 30 seconds and don't forget to floss. But our dystopian romance, that's an underexploited subgenre that I'm open to exploring with you. Maybe you'll meet me at the DMV when I go to reactivate my license. There's a place I foresee withstanding the ravages of time. And we fall in love all over again as the musty vinyl smell of bureaucracy hangs in the air. Is that dystopian enough? But this room with its tile floors and black stanchions and a dozen bored people sitting around in plastic chairs, sniffing from the decades of dust collected in the upholstered privacy dividers and the now unfamiliar smell of paper, this microcosm of staunch gloom, is our utopia. I trace my still nimble finger over the wrinkles that these 30 years have carved into your face, and marvel that I can still see you in your teeth and the lips that curl over them, thinner than before, but still yours. The sparkle in your eyes is a bit duller, but you're still looking at me like you used to. Not lately so much, but before, early on, when I was still a magical creature to you, that look rekindled by all those years of absence. Maybe that's enough to make it all worthwhile. So those 12 bored people, at least those who aren't lost in their VR goggles, I wonder if that leaves anyone. Anyway, they get a show until the person at the counter clears her throat and calls number 19 a little louder, and I become a legal person again, and we step hand in hand into the gray sky outside. The sun is getting brighter every day, you tell me. We've really made a lot of progress on the greenhouse layer. Some days you can see some blue. And we get inside your electric hover car and glide the familiar, but wow, the retail signs are all so different, and wow, look at all the trees they planted route to our home. Or maybe not. Maybe the DMV is full of strangers, and I check into a hotel room and look up at the thing that's replaced the thing that replaced Facebook. Some new window for gazing at other people, like creatures in a terrarium. And I hope it's immersive and lets you smell what they're cooking for dinner. And I find pictures of your kid graduating college. There's a hologram of a girl throwing her cap into the air. And she has your teeth and your eyes. You've moved on and found someone to make your last 30 years meaningful. Why wouldn't you? I was frozen. We'd basically frozen a long time before that. So you've moved on, but had the decency to maintain a tastefully informative public profile. I look at the date on your latest hologram and notice it was posted this morning. I wonder if you're thinking of me, of this letter, of this date. But, of course, it's about 31 years too late for us. I find out the new equivalent of a like and leave a tiny digital fingerprint on your life. I'm here, I announce. No hard feelings. And that's the end of us. I don't know which of those two ways it'll go. That's entirely up to you now. Probably none of the above. Now that I've written it down, it's become fiction. And truth is always stranger anyway. I'm sure I'll be wondering about it as the liquid nitrogen wafts in a fog around me and the glycerin joins the blood in my veins. And that's probably the final reason I'm freezing myself. The wondering. I have not felt wonder in our world for a long time. It was all so predictable. I could just look at a customer and tell you what they were going to order or how well they would tip. You were predictable with your 9 to 5 and bedtime and endless infectious cynicism. I could have taken a different risk. I could have gotten pregnant or chopped my hair off. There were other ways to avoid the slow suffocation of my creative spirit. But this opportunity came along and stirred me in a way that felt important. I have the chance to be important, my voice amplified by 30 years of silence. Be happy for me, Winston, and let me write my story. Love always, best-selling author Hasia Adam. Winston sat blinking as he took in the last of her message. He took a deep breath and looked up. It must be such a shock. Let me know if there's anything I can do, Carolyn assured him. He did. Wait, hold on. This isn't the end of the story, but does that mean like they... I'm not sure what that means, but there are some sexual connotations to that. Anyway, someone dropped something upstairs. Anyway, the story's still going. There's still plenty to the story, but I don't actually know how long because there's also a comment section, so it's not when the scroll bar gets to the end. Anyway, the story continues. For Hasia, 30 years went by in the scope and the space of a good night's sleep. Winston didn't know whether it was cold and still like an icy planet orbiting the outer ring of its solar system, or whether the strange dreams floated through her head. A 30-year-long fall, an ocean chasing her 30 feet up into a steep cliff, a library with 30,000 volumes she had to sort through in the surrounding quiet. But he wondered. He wondered when he and Carolyn hiked to the top of a mountain and they had that perfect view of the forest below. A cool mist rolling over the dense treetops in a way that sent a chill down his spine. He wondered when their daughter was born, not in that initial moment when his arms received her for the first time, and he marveled at her tiny flat nose, so impossibly tiny and perfect, but later on, when he held her in the dark and quiet, and the slideshow of her potential life rolled through his mind. First steps, a red tricycle, unicorn birthday cakes, a mouth with gaping holes that grown-up teeth would grow to fill, soccer games and talent shows, building tiny model cities together, and then watching her walk down an aisle in a cap and gown with Carolyn's eyes and his teeth. In that moment, he felt like Hasia had written this perfect creature into existence, a final gift to him. He wondered about Hasia when he went to the DMV to register his new electric car, even though it was not a hover car. He wondered about her while he watched a gray squirrel digging ferociously into the leaf-strewn ground. Wasn't it also preparing for a long sleep, hiding seeds to fuel its torpor? Only Hasia was not the squirrel. That was the publishing company spreading its investments across hundreds of hiding places to hedge an uncertain future. No, Hasia was the nut, stashed away in the frozen soil, waiting for the chance to sprout. Ooh, October, those are your clothes on my thigh. No claws. No claws. But unfocused a little bit. He wondered about her when he bought his first iPhone-compatible smart toilet and when pieces of their world fell away. It didn't happen as Hasia had imagined, as the sudden shattering of a precious vase. It was more like the slow decay of grout crumbling between tiles. The world was, at most times, completely recognizable. There were no travertine gems memorializing poverty. Winston wondered how her optimism would fare as she took the dirty white bus that still drove on the ground. It was this thought that almost convinced Winston to accompany Carolyn to the cryo-storage facility on the date where the gold hologram star had hovered for years and years, always out of reach until now. It would be a big adjustment. She would need a friend. Winston read his yellowing letter for the 9th time as he thought and thought about it. She was coming back in search of a story. What if he was the character that would drag her new story down? She would have Carolyn, after all. Carolyn would be warm and kind as she set Hasia up with her new computer and a temporary lease. And Hasia would, of course, still be herself. The very same 32-year-old, waking up with her zeal and optimism and untamable black curls that he didn't fully trust himself not to reach out and touch. He skimmed one thick finger over the faded cursive, and it struck Winston that perhaps he was the only one left to remember that Hasia always began drafting her thoughts on paper. Even 30 years ago, it was a bit eccentric to do one's writing with their hand, not their fingers. Winston didn't need to be her tour guide in the new world, but he could give her a compass. No, he told Carolyn that morning as she slipped her coffee across from him at the table. I'm staying home. Let me know how it goes. He paused as the food printer dripped hot coffee into its own cup, then slid a manila envelope toward his wife. Will you give this to her? Winston pictured Hasia tearing into the envelope, pulling out the spiral-bound notebook, feeling its pages travel between her fingers, rustling like tiny wings. She would find her paperback novel, the curled grocery receipt, saving the same spot it had marked since the nightstand. And his letter. With a familiar ache in his ribs, Winston imagined her thawing for the second time that day as she read his 3 words. No hard feelings. The end. October, you're hiding behind my thigh. That was a fun little story. I actually didn't know it was going to go into the 2 predictions for the future when she was writing her letter. And the first prediction is that this guy whose their relationship is dying, right? And then he comes back after 30 years and is waiting for her. What? But I think she was probably just making up stories. She was a optimistic writer. It's come on. If our relationship sucks and you tell me that you're going to leave me for 30 years, I'm out. I don't know, though. All right, October. Hold on, I also know. Oh, no. Is she getting up? Oh. All right. So the next song, what? The next one we're gonna... I can get my water now, that's good. I'm gonna get my water, we're gonna start the next one. And we'll have another short story. Stay tuned, don't go anywhere, unless you want to, in which case, listen to your feelings. I have sang songs before.